So welcome to another unboxing video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at, we're going to do a two-for-one here. So we're going to look at two brand new games from DVG, or Dan Versen Games. And we have, it's Warfighter, and this is Warfighter World War II North Africa, and Warfighter World War II Mediterranean. It's just released at the same time, and they're new core sets for Warfighter. Warfighter's it's a very enjoyable, fun, pulpy, side-scrolling tactical game. You can play it solo, you can play it co-op. We do a bit of both, but we do play this co-op a lot. It's just kind of a nice break from some of the other things that we do. And the core sets are a really good way to dive into this game, because this game at this point is huge, and it can be overwhelming, and there's a million different little extra expansion packs as well, and we're going to dive into some of those here as well, although not all of them because we have a lot. So we're going to open these because this is a card game. There's counters and there's a board, but it's a card game. We're going to just crack open both of these and kind of see what there is. So this is quite heavy because it's just a big stacks of cards and a mounted board in it, but again, solo game, co-op game, you can do either one, and they're enjoyable as both options. But let's have a look at what we get inside the box. So there is a rule book, and this rule book is from August 22. This is the most up-to-date version, so you can kind of see here there's a near-future version that I don't think is released yet. There's a fantasy version, not yet released, but we do have World War II. Haven't played Cold War. I don't know if that's not released yet, but there's modern. Warfighter, I think, was originally a modern game. There's Warfighter, there's a Spec Ops Night version, there's like private military contracting versions. There's all sorts of different games out here within this system. So the rulebook might look absolutely massive, but the reality is you will only use some of this stuff. This is a rulebook that covers all of these other systems as well. So just understand that, yeah, it's a, what are they calling this? 100-page rulebook. But the reality is you're going to learn some symbology from the cards, and then you're basically just going to play from the cards and the play aid. So I know this looks like a lot, but this really guides you through section by section the different aspects, and it's incredibly detailed because you're going to read it and not need it. Like, what you're going to do is you're going to have your cards out, and you have this little mini book, which this is all the keywords and explanations. This is a shorthand version of that rule book. You're going to use this. Trust me, you're going to read through some of that rule book. Again, it's broken down into sections. I know it looks like a lot, but it's not nearly as daunting as it may seem. So we have a board, and I'm going to get the board out for you here, just so that we can kind of lay everything on it. But the board is a little bit on the longer, thinner side. It's not a 22 by 34. I think it's 30. I'm not quite sure how big it is, but it is glossy. You can see that here. It's quite shiny, and so it's fine to play on, but making playthrough videos of this actually kind of sucks. So I have a neoprene mat, which we're going to use that for that kind of content when we do reviews and stuff, because it's much less glare on it. But this is the one for, it's got the little Italian flag on it, you know, different Italian language guides here. The flavor of this, functionally this board is identical to all the other Warfighter ones, but it's just the flavor that you get with it. That's a nice little touch. But the gameplay is in these sections, right? You're going to have your guys moving through different terrains, getting from here to wherever your objective is in a certain amount of time, and then different enemies will occupy those terrains, and you're fighting your way through it, right? That's what this game is. There's a big deck of event cards and action cards, and it's fueling your way to do that. Turn sequence, action sequence, and a little kind of very small attack chart that you've got here. That, again, the board is really easy to reference and to play through. Please don't be put off by that 100-page rulebook. That's 5 games of rules in one. Just remember that. So we have a lot of counters in this game. Some of them you'll use all the time, some of them less so, but first off, you have these markers, and these are for your guys. You're going to have a card for each of your soldiers. You might have anywhere from like 2 to 8 of them total in a given mission. And you'll put a 1 on this card, who's soldier number 1, and then you'll have his corresponding counter moving through the terrains. So you can have off-map all of your stuff, and then on-map, so to speak, it's just one little counter moving along. Ammo trackers, enemy KIA markers, hostile objectives, and then we have some of these, you'll see lots of these items. So there's rockets, canteens, we have over here like rifle grenades, breach charges, satchel charges. These, I believe these are the target markers. You're going to put a certain number of these in the cup, and then enemies going to draw those, and that's kind of who they target for the attack. I'm pretty sure that's how it is anyway. More enemy KIA markers, and then we have these hardy markers. You can gain hardiness that helps you to withstand weather and adverse effects. More of these items going on here. Little melee combat symbols, grenades, smoke grenades. Again, these are all reversed as well. Damage markers, I'm pretty sure. And then these stars of you gain experience, and you can spend experience if you're doing a campaign and guys level up, they can get better. Action markers, you have a certain number of actions to spend. And then some enemy held markers, different items, things like that, more EKIA. And then these, I think some of these are new. These little status markers, I don't know if I've played with these before, so this might be new for me at least, where just little condition markers, +1 to cover, +1 to your hand size, +2 to attack, +4... so I think those are very helpful, but I'm pretty sure those are new to me at least. So that will be very helpful, because trying to keep track and remember some of all the nuances can be challenging, but that's very helpful if they are. And again, these are all little very thick pre-rounded counters. They punch really easily, so it's a nice. Half of these I don't need, because you use a lot of the same markers from game to game. But we'll punch a lot of those and use those in the game. So, everything else that's in here. So we have a bag of dice. One of the cool things about this game is it uses a mixture of dice. You get 3d10 and a d6. And if you look at this little chart here, you have to kill someone, you need to succeed on a attack roll and a defeat cover roll. So defeating cover is a 1 through 6, and your attack roll is a 1 through 10. And so you need to roll high to defeat cover and then to kill them. This is an excellent roll, you're going to kill someone. If either one of them rolls low, you're going to hit them, but you don't defeat their cover, they just become suppressed. If you roll really low on this and really high on this, you defeat their cover, but your bullets don't do anything, they're suppressed. And if you miss on both, then it's a total miss, nothing happens. Some machine guns, things like that. Oh, that's an awful roll. Oh no, I've cursed the dice already. But some dice, some weapons do multiple attacks, grenade attacks, for example. You're going to chuck a bunch of dice, things like that. So, everything else in this box is cards. Remember, the cards is the majority of what the game is and how the game is played. So, we have our action deck. We're going to look at those. We have some weapons, objectives, and then we have hostiles. Oh, that's funny. And then these guys are a bit of everything. So, let's have a quick look at this one. We're just going to crack these open one at a time. We might not. Okay. Hopefully these are organized reasonably well. Yeah, action deck. And it says on here Mediterranean action deck. So if you get the European theater one and the Pacific one, they have different action decks, and those are very important. So, and then we have some equipment. So equipment comes as regular equipment, or you have faction-aligned Italian equipment. So regular equipment, quinine tablets, a first aid kit, an entrenching tool, breaching charge, right? Anyone can use those. But this Italian one, very specifically, is their web gear, which is their specific web gear that has all of these different abilities to it based on what their web gear kind of allowed. And that'll be different from American web gear that had a different functionality and different things in it. And there's be lots of gear in this. So the action deck, and you're going to have a hand of action cards that you're going to go through. You're going to pay to do whatever it says on it. And some of these things are going to be like to move, or to do a combined fire action, or to prepare fire, or to take a snapshot. And this is the Italian game, right? It's the Mediterranean theatre. And so here they have it in Italian and then English underneath for the titles. So, you know, buona mira, steady aim, right? I appreciate that they did that. They didn't have to. Advancing, right? It's moving. Taking a snapshot, taking a quick pot shot, basically. So these are... That's how you kind of function. And some of them, it's like, you're going to pay to play a thing, or you might have... These are also a currency. You might have to ditch a number of cards to, you know, get into a terrain type. So it's harder to move through like a bog or a swamp. So you have to play in advance, but you have to pay the entry cost in other cards. And you don't just automatically draw cards. You have to spend an action to fill your hand. So there's a really nice action economy with those that I really like in this game. I think here we have some more action cards, I believe. So we will open this, because we do have some other stuff here. Get all that out of here. So here we have the rest of the Mediterranean action deck. So it's a big old deck, right? Lots of these going on. So your action deck is a big old chunk of, I think it's 60 cards at least. Then we have here, let's see, we have the UK hostile deck. And the UK hostiles, so these are UK or British and Commonwealth troops, and this is hostile. So this is you as an Italian fighting against UK troops. And there are frontline troops, or there are elite troops, depending on your difficulty setting of the game, basically. And so these might be like, hey, there's some territorials, and they have the E, because this is the elite territorials card. And they'll have a cover number that you have to defeat with that D6, but then they also have an attack roll that they're going to roll with their D10, and there's a couple different, depending on how many wounds they've taken, they have 3 wounds that they can take, because there's 3 guys in that squad. But they've got really nice historical photos on them. Infantrymen, little P-38 Lightning, right? It's really simple. These are going to be out on all the terrains. You have to go and fight and defeat those. Let's see, what do we got here? Let's look at this one. So yeah, this particular one, you play as the Italians, I believe, which is a little bit different, but we will discuss that here further in a bit. So we have some service records, which we'll get to. We have some event cards, which we'll get to. Okay. And then the rest of these guys. So there's a lot of enemies in this, right? And you have them shuffled up, and you're going to draw them. There's some rules about that. But you have flamethrowers or sharpshooters, engineers. You have a Bedford QLT, skirmishers, a fire team. And they got these nice historical pictures on them, which I really appreciate as well. Daimler armored car, little universal brain carrier, Shermans. And then this guy is a slightly different color, and I wonder if this is a replacement for, because this is a very different color, this might be a replacement for Europe, or something like that. Sometimes they toss in some other bits and pieces like that into these. So, we're going to have an event deck. There's going to be more of these in here, and you're going to flip an event during the event phase, or when asked to, and your events will be like, hey, you can pay 2 XP to advance the timer 1 space and inflict suppress on all soldiers. So that's good to inflict suppress on everyone, but, oh, that's on yours. Oh, that's bad. Oh, gosh. Oh, you pay 2 XP or do it. So you're going to pay 2 XP or everyone's going to be suppressed. That's very bad. And you lose time. Also very bad. Yeah, events are typically bad. Some of them are good, though. But there's a bunch of those. Oh, and then the service records. So this is, you can play, like, this is historical situations that you can kind of play with and play for. and be those that you can kind of sit in. So let's open this deck of cards. So this deck of cards has our Mediterranean objectives, Mediterranean locations, and then mission cards. And on here it actually tells you, use World War II Mediterranean action cards. That's this deck, right? It references those. That's nice. I think that's might be a new addition. And then we have our Italian soldier cards, which we'll get to. This is what you're going to play as. So the location cards, which are going to go down the bottom, this is what you're going to be moving through. This is different terrains. So we have alpine crags, prehistoric cliffs, a deep forest, goat trails, windswept plateaus, and they have like, to enter it costs you 3 points to move in. You have to ditch cards or have good movement points to get into those. And then like, there's a chart of what enemies might be there and what it costs to do some special actions there. And there's all sorts of keywords in each of those. So there's a bunch of those. These are the missions. So you're going to draw one mission that's going to be at the end of your terrains that you're going to have to do. And the mission tells you how many rounds you have to do it, what the objective is, where it's located. You've got to move 4 spaces and do a thing. How many resource points you have to spend on building your team and kitting them out, all that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of those. And when you get to the objective, so it'll tell you, hey, the objective is in this space, but what is the objective? The objective is a fortified artillery space that you have to destroy. Or it might be to get to a place and then hold fast. Sit in that place and don't die until the end of the game. You might have to go and make a bivouac, or there's an enemy major that you have to run across the board, and then you have to take this guy out. But he's got guys protecting him, right? So these are kind of the core of what your mission will look like tactically speaking. And then our soldier cards. So you're going to build your squad with soldiers, and what's that going to look like? Each of these has a cost in the top right-hand corner. And the more expensive they are, the better they are, is effectively what it is. So this guy is a veteran rifleman, and you look here for the veteran rifleman keywords, and that's going to tell you what that means. He's got 2 CX, so he's got some experience to start with effectively. And they have a movement value as well, which is typically good or real bad. But yeah, they're named, historical pictures on them, and they all do different things. They have different loadouts of how much they can hold, health values. This guy's really strong. But he doesn't have any action cards, he kind of sucks. And so you get from like your regular soldiers, and then you get to these guys, which are TS, which are not as good. They're kind of support guys. I can't remember what the TS stands for. And then you have the non-player soldiers. These are really like the Mook squaddies. They're really cheap, and they're not very good. But you have to have, like, there comes a point, it sounds grim, you have to kind of have some bodies to support you doing things. So there's 3 different levels of soldiers. You have guys that have a hand of cards that are like, almost like the NCOs driving everyone else. Then you have the middle layer, which is the TS guys, the squaddies. And then you've got like the NPS guys. They're real sad. But they're just grunts. They're just moving and shooting. They're not doing any of the extra stuff, effectively speaking. And the last thing that we've got in this is some more items, I think. So we have lots of, and it's kind of a bit of a mess here. Some weapons, nice. A little keyword for, so this is a little play aid for shadow attacks and for unarmored combat, which you get into some skills, which we'll get into the skills. And some situation cards. Ooh, situation cards. So, different situations that you can be placed into. I don't know if we've played with those before. So, the skill cards, some of your soldiers will say, hey, he's a rifleman veteran. Guess what? Rifleman is a card that he has. Add 1 or 2 to your rifle carbine attack rolls. So you always add 1, you can add 2 if you spend an experience. So he's just very good if he's armed with a rifle or carbine. Agile, tenacity, leader, explosives, right? So the veteran, that one guy was a veteran, right? Gain 1 extra action each soldier turn and start with +2 experience. That's very strong. But he's also very expensive to take in your squad. So you can have a really amazing guy and a couple of really terrible guys, and it's finding that good balance. But yeah, lots of skills that you can gain. Some of them are bad, some of them are good. Some of them you're forced to get, some of them you're not. A few more pieces of equipment. And then our weapons. And some of them are faction locked and some of them are not. So here we've got a regular satchel charge. Anyone can use a satchel charge. But here we've got the Italian loadout. So the M1891 rifle, carbines, SMG, pistols, light machine guns, big old machine guns, right? So you're going to get guys, you're going to give them a loadout, and you're going to take them on these missions. Oh, you can give them a sword. And go through those. So that's everything that comes in just the Mediterranean one. Real quick, we're not going to dive in too deep, because well, otherwise it'll be a whole hour. But same rule book in the North Africa one. Same play aid. The board itself is different, although it's identical functionally speaking. It's just new artwork on it. So we'll just show you what that looks like. Right? It's all the same spots. It's all the same, tracks and tables. It's just different artwork on it. Different imagery. But you could literally use any of the maps. Almost all the sheets are identical, counter sheets wise. You might have some new and different items, but that's pretty much the only thing that changes from game to game. And even then, those look like they're all very similar. We have disdain markers. Are those new? Those might be new. But other than that, everything else is pretty much identical there. Same dice. Now, and then everything else here is different. So we have the North Africa action deck. We got 2 of those. Instead of having UK hostiles, in this one we have German hostile decks, right? Because in this one it's 8th Army, Desert Rats fighting against the German Africa Corps. In the Mediterranean, your Italians fighting against British and Commonwealth troops. But in this one, you've got the deck of British soldier cards in them, instead of the Italians, and you're fighting against the Germans. But functionally, it's a similar type of content that you get in the box, same volumetrically speaking at least. So that's what comes in that one. I know that was very brief, but there's also a trillion of these little pack expansions, and sure, this game is a money sink if you're a collector and you want to get everything, but what I'm telling you is you don't have to. You can get as much or as little as you want. There are hardcore collectors who have everything. I'm going to show you a couple of these because they can be very interesting. So this pack, which is expansion 87, is the Gurkhas. And so you get some extra events for the Gurkhas, and it's a bunch of UK hostiles and their Gurkhas, right? But then you also get soldiers to play, which are Gurkhas. So depending on what you have, you can play as the Gurkhas, right? Which is awesome. They give you soldiers, they give you non-player soldiers, they give you squaddies. And then you also get some special skills for them. We're going to get a couple extra items to use with them. Kukris, right? But you also get enemy versions of them. So you can either play as the Gurkhas or you can play against the Gurkhas. If you want to add those or switch them out, you can play against the Gurkhas if you want to do that. And that's, if you are really into that, or you read a book about the Gurkhas recently, the little theme packs are some of my favorite, because it's a really good way to add splash to it, right? There's a Royal Italian Army expansion, there's Desert Rats, it's just more Desert Rats. You've got an LRDG one, you got Deutsche Afrika Korps, and it just adds, for like Deutsche Afrika Korps, it just adds more enemies that you can add into that, but they're a bit more, usually a bit more brutal, but it adds, you can play as the Deutsche Afrika Korps in there. So those are really nice little theme packs that you can add. There are vehicle packs. So these are German Afrika Korps vehicles. And in the vehicle packs, you also get anti-vehicle cards. And those are important because if vehicles show up, you're pretty much hosed. But there's all sorts of anti-vehicle cards and weapons that you can use that are much better at targeting those. So we've got all the anti-vehicle stuff, right? Equipment. Little armor plates you can add to your tanks. So the vehicle cards are the rest of these ones. When you add vehicles, there is, we're going to add these to the North Africa action deck. There's a bunch of like vehicle action cards that correspond with those. So the vehicle cards, right? Panzer IIs, Panzer IIs, Panzer IIIs, Panzer IIIJ, Panzer IIINs, Panzer IVs. What do we got here? This little self-propelled guns, Tiger tanks, half tracks. So these ones you play as, but again, you also have ones that you can play against. You can kind of toss these all into your Deutsche Afrika Korps from the North Africa set. So you can optionally put a ton of these vehicles in it if you wanted to make it more challenging, and they do make it more challenging. But, you know, sometimes you just want to add some fun to that, rocking and rolling. They're very expensive if you want to drive a tank, but it can be fun. But then you also have things like these battle packs. And the battle packs are nice because they're like little historical modules. And we'll just open one of these. This is Battle of Crete. This is going to give you... So this has a bunch of New Zealanders in it, it looks like, which is nice. You'll love to see that. Well, it's got some. So yeah, we've got some New Zealanders in it. Are they New Zealanders? If they're Australians, I'm very sorry. Well, weapons to go along with them. But this has more targeted, specific locations and missions that you're going to do that were part of that. And then the different events and like the German paras and stuff, then it's a more targeted OOB, and the events are more specific to historical things that had happened. So that's something the battle packs offer you. Again, something that's different. And like I said, you don't got to buy all of them. I mean, like, you're gonna, but you don't have to. You can tailor this game to whatever you want it to be. You can buy, but, you know, pick up a core set. That'll serve you perfectly fine. You don't need any of the extra stuff, but if you like the game, you will want some of the extra stuff. And some of it's just to, like, give you even more just options, right? But a lot of it, like, there's a beach landing expansion. That is so much fun because it's totally different styles of missions and objectives. There's an expansion for, like, emplacement. So it just gives you a bunch of, like, pillboxes or, like, trenches to go, and you got to get there and then do demo charges at the end. There's all sorts of extra bits and pieces that really do change the game, even though what you get in a core set is more than enough to play with. So, I know that was a ton. I've rambled for a lot, but I hope that was at least somewhat helpful. That was a look at Warfighter World War II, both Mediterranean, and a brief look at North Africa and some of the expansions. But check this out if this is something you're interested. This is kind of a mainstay and a favorite here at the Player's Aid. Like, we just play this for fun a lot, and it's very enjoyable. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.